Security services in the UK say scores of British are fighting in Syria and could use their weapons know-how to cause havoc when they come back home. This is just one part of a wide-ranging report into key terrorist threats faced by Britain that extend to biological weapons attacks and cybercrime. RT Sarah Firth takes up the story.
It's the first annual report on the UK's counter-terrorism strategy, and in it they highlighted the growing security threat from Syria, where al-Qaeda affiliates were attracting hundreds of fighters from Europe. Now let's take a little look at some of what the report says. And they said as and when UK residents return home, there's a risk that they may carry out attacks using skills that they've developed overseas. Now, these are concerns that aren't only being highlighted by the British government, but are also being highlighted by other European members as well. Recently, we saw the Dutch heighten their security threat level as they said that they thought they had around 100 foreign fighters that had gone to Syria. And these are also concerns that I think have been echoed by France as well. So certainly not just a problem concerning Britain, but one obviously that we've seen highlighted in this counter-terrorism strategy report, and certainly I think a lot of concern amongst the British authorities that we're seeing these young British people fighting in the war zone. Now I'm joined by freelance Syrian journalist Malik Al-Abda. Thank you very much for joining us. We're seeing British people, going over to what is a war zone in Syria. What's the appeal? What's the allure? Why are these young British men going over to fight in a civil war?
Well, if you're practicing Muslim and you believe that jihad represents one of the pillars of Islam and it represents a large part of your belief, then Syria is a very attractive place to go and fight. I mean, for a previous generation, perhaps the war in Afghanistan against the Soviets was the one to go to. And then in the 90s, you had Bosnia and Chechnya. But now you've got Syria. So every 4 or 5 years, there is a particular battlefield, a particular location that attracts jihadists from around the world. And it just so happens that now it is Syria, partly because it's relatively easy to get there, but also because there is a lot of historical and religious importance attached to Syria and to Damascus especially, the place where it says in the Quran where Jesus Christ is going to come back and there's going to be Armageddon and so on. And many of the jihadists who go and fight in Syria actually believe in these things, and they believe that Syria has a special religious significance.
Okay, Malik, thank you very much for joining us. I know you described it as a tsunami. I don't think anyone could have had any idea of just how complex and how far-reaching the implications of what is happening in Syria right now will be.
And a Labour MP for Birmingham, Khalid Mahmood, I spoke to him a little earlier. He said it is high time security services are paying attention to people coming back to the UK from war zones.
Where no heed has been taken by the security services or by the Home Office or the Foreign Office for that matter. I'm glad that this is now on their agenda, on their horizons, because once you put people out there and they get that sort of training, they get the ability to use the weapons that are available to them, when they come back here, once they start to feel discontented and disquiet about particular issues, they'll resort to that, and that's happened before. We know it's happened certainly in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and we've got to learn those lessons. I know that the groups that have just come back this week, gone on a tour for supporting aid in the communities out there, and once you go out for aid, then you get dragged into other issues, and you start to look at resistance, and you start supporting the resistance and working with the resistant people.